Narayam namaskricham naram chaivam narotamam devim saraswatim vyasam tato jaya mudirayat nasta prayeshu abhadreshu nityam bhagavata sevaya bhagavati uttama shlokir bhaktir bhavati naistiki. Reading from the Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 1, Text 8, Text number 40. Imegyana pada shraddha supfoshadi virdha vanadai nadyudananrito Yedanta tava vikshita imajana pada shraddha imajara pada sridha supakva shuddha virudha supavak shadhi virudha Vanadrin adjudanvanto Yedante tava vikshitai Ime jana padashvidha Supavakshadhi virudha Vanadrin nadjudanvanto Yedenta tava vikshita Imajana padasvadra Subhakshadi viruddaha Vanadri nadyundavanto Yedante tava vikshita Anyone else, ladies? Virudaha Nadri Nadi Responsibly, Ime, all these. Janapadaha, cities and towns. Sridha, flourished. Supakva, mature. Aushadhi, herbs. Virudaha, vegetables. Vana, forests. Adri, hills. Nadi, rivers. Udanvantaha, seas. He, certainly. Hidante, increasing. Tava, by you. Vikshitahai, seen. All these cities and villages are flourishing in all respects because the herbs and grains are in abundance. The trees are full of fruits, the rivers are flowing, the hills are full of minerals, and the oceans full of wealth. All this is due to your glancing over them. Responsibly, all these cities and villages are flourishing in all respects because the herbs and grains are in abundance. The trees are full of fruits. The rivers are flowing. The hills are full of minerals. And the oceans full of wealth. And this is all due to your glancing over them. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. Human prosperity flourishes by natural gifts and not by gigantic industrial enterprises. The gigantic industrial enterprises are products of a godless civilization, and they cause the destruction of the noble aims of human life. The more we go on increasing such troublesome industries to squeeze out the vital energy of the human being, the more there will be unrest and dissatisfaction of the people in general, although a few only can live lavishly by exploitation. The natural gifts, such as grains and vegetables, fruits, rivers, the hills of jewels and minerals, and the seas full of pearls, are supplied by the order of the Supreme, and as he desires. Material nature produces them in abundance or restricts them at times. The natural law is that the human being may take advantage of these godly gifts by nature and satisfactorily flourish on them without being captivated by the exploitative motive of lording it over material nature. The more we attempt to exploit material nature according to our whims of enjoyment, the more we shall become entrapped by the reaction of such exploitative attempts. We have sufficient grains, fruits, vegetables, and herbs, and what is the necessity of running a slaughterhouse and killing poor animals? A man need not kill an animal if he has sufficient grains and vegetables to eat. The flow of river waters fertilizes the fields, and there is more than what we need. Minerals are produced in the hills, and the jewels in the ocean. If the human civilization has sufficient grains, minerals, jewels, water, milk, etc., then why should it hanker after terrible industrial enterprises at the cost of the labor of some unfortunate men? But all these natural gifts are dependent on the mercy of the Lord. What we need, therefore, is to be obedient to the laws of the Lord and achieve the perfection of human life by devotional service. The indications by Kunti Devi are just to the point. She desires that God's mercy be bestowed upon them so that natural prosperity be maintained by His grace. Om Agyanati Mirandasya Gananjana Salakaya Chaksuru Unmilitam Jena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Mukam Karoti Vachalam Pongum Longayate Girim Yat Kripatarham Bande Shri Guru Dinatarane. So, in a sense, this statement by Kunti Devi is a kind of indirect prediction of environmental purity and environmental chaos. The idea is that that we live at a time when the natural gifts, as Prabhupada mentions, like water and pearls and fruit and vegetables, are in abundance, but they're all polluted. Just like the water and the air and the ground, everything is polluted. This is also mentioned in the Ishopanishad in the first mantra, that everybody has a quota, and when we go beyond that quota, there is trouble. And I think it was none other than Gandhi who said that the world has enough for everyone's need, but not enough for everyone's greed, which is kind of a poetic way of predicting that because people will become greedy in the age of Kali, there will be a shortage. And as Prabhupada mentions in the purport, sometimes the natural things are restricted. When there's a lot of sinful activity going on in the earth, like there is at the moment, the natural gifts are restricted. So there's a shortage of everything: shortage of water, shortage of oil, shortage of sunshine, shortage of rain, as we're experiencing here. And a lot of things are restricted. So it's all controlled by the Lord. And in a sense, that's the atheistic view. The difference between the atheist and the theist is that the atheist sees that everything is happening by the sort of control, you might say, of nature. And there's nothing behind nature. But Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita, I think in the 9th chapter, Maya dakshena prakriti suyate chat sacharatram hetu nanena konteya jagadvi parivartate, that everything, even in nature, is controlled by the Lord. That's the difference between the theist and the atheist. The theist sees that the gifts and the restrictions that come upon human beings are all engendered by the Supreme Lord, and the atheist sees that these are the quirks of nature, that sometimes nature restricts the flow, sometimes nature increases the flow. We were talking today how mangoes seem to only come every other season. They don't come in every season. In some parts of the world they come in every season. But there was a grove that Prabhupada used to stop in to eat the mangoes. It was near Vrindavan. But some years the mangoes weren't there because in that part of India, it's quite high. It's at sort of at the base of the Himalayas. There were sometimes no mangoes. So the mangoes are occasionally given. Occasionally restricted and occasionally very, very profuse. So I think Krishna Kirtan was saying today that sometimes there's so many mangoes in Queensland that that the government has to supply extra bins for them to throw the things away. So we don't realize what an opulent area we're living in because it's not only subtropical. This is subtropical, but some of the Australian states are in tropical areas. So there's a great profusion of very wonderful fruits. I didn't even know the names of some of them. I'm able to in my place grow chikus, which are unheard of, and other people are growing other very unusual fruits like jackfruits, and in Queensland and Northern Territories there's some tropical fruits that are very unusual for people that aren't in tropical areas to know. It's interesting that the BBT has recently commissioned a rewrite of the book Divine Nature that Druta Karma and I wrote, because it's become a big issue these days, that what is the environment. It's interesting that Prabhupada, and this stuff was written or spoken by Queen Kunti and written thousands of years ago, that there are natural things. In a way, it was kind of predicting that in the future there would be restriction and chaos and pollution. It's a kind of ironic play on words that white people, at least in the United States, call people that aren't white the minority. The irony is that the white people, even in that country, are in the minority. There's more black people and brown people, Mexicans and blacks and whatever, than there are white people. So it's kind of an interesting thing that's going on. It's kind of a strange play on words. And it was when Srila Prabhupada first came to the United States, they produced this vinyl 33 1/3 record. And on it he says that the more we try to exploit the resources of material nature, the more we become entangled in her complexities. So this was sort of a presaging what would be happening many years later. Of course, the environment was in trouble even then, but now it's become a major issue to the point where people are trying to restrict and abolish feedlots, or in industrial meat industry speak, CAFOs, concentrated animal feed operations. They try to minimize the fact that they're actually slaughterhouses. And I think there's a law, someone told me that I think who were looking after the cows earlier, that there's a law in this country that every cow is supposed to have 1 acre to graze in, but that law is not enforced. And I saw an aerial photograph of the biggest feedlot, supposedly in the world, somewhere in Colorado, and the animals are almost shoulder to shoulder. It's unbelievably what they make these animals go through, the kind of torture that they have. So Prabhupada did say, he's on record of saying that we're the greatest opportunists. Actually, that he says the best opportunists. And it was in a conversation in 1977. I think it was Rameshwar was there. I don't know who all was there, but I looked it up, and he said that we are the best opportunists. So we can take advantage of this. This was in relation to someone speaking about world warfare and all that sort of thing, and what will the Krishna consciousness movement do at that time. And the conversation kind of migrated into, well, we'll just chant Hare Krishna, and people will think that that's wonderful, because even in times of great difficulty and stress, that the movement would be flourishing. And then in that context, Prabhupada said, we are the best opportunists. Of course, there are many opportunists, and some people say that we're on the dawn of the golden age. Some people think that the golden age has already begun with Lord Chaitanya. So there are some indications. Some people say that it's just starting, and some people say that it's not going to start for a long time. However, it is said in some of the Puranas that there will be a kind of golden period, a 10,000-year period, and Prabhupada also talked about this in Kali Yuga. which is another minority issue. If Kali Yuga is to last 432,000 years, and we've only passed 5,000 years, it's only about 1.5% of the age. So in a way, things are going to get a lot better, a lot worse, and then better, maybe. I don't know. That's just a kind of a speculation. But it is predicted that there would be a time of, like Satya Yuga in the midst of Kali Yuga. What a lot of people don't realize is that Kali Yuga is a minority, just like the material world is a minority part of creation. It's the Ekapad Vibhuti as opposed to the Tripad Vibhuti. This is mentioned in a purport in the Srimad Bhagavatam, and also Prabhupada on several occasions has talked about the fact that the material world is only 1/4 of the whole creation. But we think that this is it. This is the wonderful advances are made in medicine and in communication and travel, and therefore we're on the brink of everything getting better and better and better. But according to Srimad Bhagavatam, things may get better for a while, but they're going to get very much worse for several hundreds of thousands of years, for at least 300,000 or 200,000 years. So that's the difficulty that we're facing. It's interesting that the BBT, of all people, which is a very conservative organization, wants what they call an update of the Divine Nature book. Really, after talking with Judah Karma, we realize it requires more than just an update. It's more like a total rewrite, because so much has happened in the last. This book was written in 1994 approximately, so much has happened since then. To make people are no longer generally proud of the world. They're not proud of the air they breathe or the water they drink. In Los Angeles, in the supermarkets, I used to live in Los Angeles, so I know this is true. The biggest item that's sold is water. There's an entire aisle. It's quite long. The aisles are about maybe 30 meters long. And there's bottles of all kinds of bottled water for sale, because the water in that part of the world is pretty terrible. It's very polluted, and it tastes very bad. I don't know if some of you know what it's like. But what they do is they recycle, because there's such a shortage of water, it's recycled and put through these, sometimes it's evaporated. That's a little better. But the natural situation is that seawater is evaporated, and that water becomes distilled, and it becomes pure. And the natural, and then it comes down in the form of rain and forms rivers of fresh water, and underground aquifers are part of that system. It's a natural thing. So people think it's a very wonderful thing that there are inventions now that evaporate water and make distilled water out of salty and impure water. But it's a natural, God-given event. The sun naturally evaporates water and makes it pure, even though it's not pure in the oceans anyway. It's salty, it's not drinkable. Maybe it's pure, but it's not drinkable. So I'm going to read a little portion of a pamphlet that Judah Karma wrote most of, and I wrote some of, in 1994 about the environment. I suppose, in a sense, that we were sort of, harbingers of the future, and the pamphlet was called "Save Earth Now," which is a pretty dramatic way of saying it. And this part of it reads that something deep within each of us seems to baffle our hopes for a more livable world. At the core of the problem is a relentless, almost unconscious drive to have and enjoy more than we really need. So this kind of goes along with that saying that the world has enough for everyone's need, but not enough for everyone's greed. And the fact that we're able to use everything makes us the great opportunists, or the greatest opportunists in a sense. Most things in the world, like technology, for example, sounds, and computers and music, are used to immerse people more deeply in material enjoyment, to increase material enjoyment. You walk down the street of any major city, and some horrible, in my estimation, some people like it, but music is blaring out. And some people, even when they're exercising, they're listening to this rocking to the beat music all the time. And they think that it's wonderful. We're all progressing. But in a way, it's a form of intoxication. It's a way of retreating or recessing from the so-called real world into a domain of so-called happiness. Happiness in music, happiness in sex, happiness in intoxication. And one of the most common forms of intoxication, cocaine, is unstoppable. When I was on an airplane once, I sat next to a person who worked in the Drug Enforcement Agency, and they had recently, or they were about to, corner and murder this guy named Pablo Escobar from Colombia, who was the sort of cocaine lord of the world. They were importing huge amounts of cocaine into the United States through airplanes, through boats, through underground tunnels, overground, and everything. And this man told me that even though the government was spending billions, they had spent about $8 billion. The Bush senior administration spent something like $8 billion to control the drug traffic. But this person who worked for the Drug Enforcement Agency said that as long as people desire to escape into this netherworld of cocaine, catching one of the big drug lords and spending $8 billion wouldn't make a difference at all. As long as there was a desire, they would find a way to get it, whether it's overground, underground, on ground, or whatever. People are doing it. Sometimes people are critical about a big fence that's proposed to be built between Mexico and the United States in the Texas area. The film that won the number one award for documentaries was called Cartel Land, not Cartel, but Cartel Land, meaning that the area between southern Texas and northern Mexico, which was the area where cocaine and marijuana were trafficked frequently and heavily, there was a lot of bloodshed, murder associated with those, and attempts to stop the flow of this. But as long as the people wanted it, they'd figure out a way to do it. And one of the people who imported, I heard about this. One of the biggest importers of marijuana in Mexico was caught by the law enforcement authorities, but he had so much money that he bribed the authorities, and although he was caught 2 or 3 times, he was able to escape by paying people off. So that's the nature of people's incredible desire to intoxicate, to escape from the world of Kali Yuga. They find some method of escape in music and drugs and sex and whatever it is, all the things. So in a sense, what Prabhupada was doing what he was preaching was very much against the grain. He said that when he in a lecture, or maybe it was a conversation, but I heard this when he was saying that when he was very uncompromising in terms of behavior and philosophical principles. He said that when he would tell people no intoxication, no illicit sex, no gambling, no drugs, no meat eating, people will say, go home. And he said he was very surprised that people in the West whose lives are based upon this form of enjoyment would think that this is a good thing, that giving up these things is actually a good thing. He talks about one of his godbrothers who went to England, saying that he was talking to someone in the upper classes, a lord so-and-so, and he wanted to be made a Brahmin, and he said, can you make me a Brahmin? And this godbrother Prabhupada said, of course I can do it. And he said, what do I have to do? And the godbrother told him, well, you have to give up meat eating, sex, free sex, illicit sex, gambling, and meat eating. He gave him the 4 principles, and he said, oh, that's impossible. That is my life. So it is very much against the grain, what I'm saying. But even though it's very much against the grain, Prabhupada has been successful. The Hare Krishna movement has been successful, even though it's talking about something which is very much against what people have. And in his preaching in India, Prabhupada was saying that these people in the West, they have all they want. They have all the illicit sex, all the drugs, all the meat, all the intoxication that they want, and yet somehow or other, and he said he was very surprised that they took to Krishna consciousness. So I'm going to stop here and ask if there's anything anyone wants to say or any questions. By the way, I mentioned to Savas that that doing a rewrite of this book is probably going to take. It's not just simply an update. It's going to take a lot longer than it seems like. Yes.
Thank you for the wonderful talk. It's amazing. The dairy industry is quite.
Which industry?
The dairy industry.
Dairy.
It's quite detrimental to the environment as well. We see countless animal suffering and so many farms that are polluting the world with dairy. But yet dairy seems quite a normal thing. Yeah.
If you go into a supermarket, there's a lot of milk and yogurt and cheese and butter on the shelves. It's one of the biggest items you can see. And although the movement that's against eating or consuming dairy products is correct from an ethical point of view, because the dairy industry and the slaughterhouse industry are very closely intertwined, almost inextricably. It's almost impossible to remove one from the other. But from a nutritional point of view, milk, that, especially whole milk that's not polluted or contaminated with additives, is actually, there's many organizations that say it's actually good for you. So there's something, and Prabhupada writes that there's a miracle. He says in his words, he calls it, there's a miracle in milk. Of course, he's referring to milk that's not contaminated. So it's kind of a difficult thing. But one of the people who produces artificial meat had a T-shirt with a slogan on it that said, "Happy cows from mad scientists." And what he's producing is a kind of I mean, it's not just him, but I think other organizations are producing a kind of meat that doesn't take the parts of cells out of moving living entities. They've isolated a molecule from, it's plant-based, in other words. So this is an opinion. This is a kind of like, not a condemnation of the vegan industry, although there's some weaknesses in there that have to be realistically encountered. And some people that have a non-dairy diet find that they have health problems after some time. So it's good in from an ethical point of view, but from a nutritional point of view, it's a little weak.
And normally it's the B12 that is lacking, because the
Yeah.
B12 is what you get from drinking milk, but the B12 can be you can use it.
I don't know much about biochemistry, but it sounds good.
Yeah. So you can actually supplement, or you can get nutritional yeast to get the B12. But a lot of vegans find that they don't actually supplement or get their B12, and that's where you get problems when you get it from.
There was a book called Beyond Beef written maybe 20 or 30 years ago, which was saying that the methane, which comes from feedlots, is creating a kind of almost a shield and causing a lot of pollution because it doesn't break down like other gases do. And in fact, people who know chemistry say that it doesn't break down at all. And the United States is the biggest polluter, greatest offender, because it has more feedlots than any other country per capita, per acre. I have to confess I'm part of that variety of human beings. You had a comment? Haladini?
Thank you very much for a very nice class. You were discussing the mini golden age, that we hear about, and you were saying that Srila Prabhupada discusses this, but were you suggesting that Prabhupada has not confirmed that mini golden era started when Lord Chaitanya, like when he was...
That's my suggestion, that Prabhupada has not confirmed that the golden age has begun.
Right, okay, thank you.
Someone else had a comment or a question?
Very well. So when there's a lot of simple activity, then Mother Nature withholds her fruits and nutrients. Is it the same with the mother cow? Like, what is it when the cows are withholding the milk? What is that caused by?
Withholding the milk from calves or human beings, or just in general?
Yeah, sometimes they don't really produce a lot of milk.
It could be said that that's part of a divine restriction. It's written in the Srimad Bhagavatam that the milk from cows was flowing so abundantly that they muddied the ground. Even when they weren't milking, there was milk coming out of their udders. Any other statements or questions? So I think we'll end here, and thank you very much. Hare Krishna.